The Mimic. The Mimic. So this Mimic is a tale about a family stricken with grief from the loss of a child and the fact that the grandmother, I guess the matriarch of the family, is losing her mental facilities. This family moves to a new house in a more rural area.
Ah, the rural juror.
For a little bit of a fresh start, and also they feel like it'd just be easier to take care of the grandmother that way. Little do they know, there's a mysterious cave nearby this new house. This was a 2017 Korean horror drama from the director Jung-ah. Jung-ah. Sorry, I haven't heard it out loud. And these last 10 years or so, Korea has been a really big hotbed of some really good horror. A lot of the times having to do with local tales and folklore, but not every time. You know, stuff like Train to Busan wasn't, I don't think, based on any local folklore. But the setup of the Mimic actually kind of reminds me a little bit of Pet Sematary, where they move to a new area and then there's, a cemetery behind the house and the new property. This does have that similarity. They're starting a little bit fresh, and behind their property, a bit of ways in the woods, is a cave. In this case, with the cave, uh, this tale has allusions to local folklore having to do with a tiger spirit, I believe. And of course, in Pet Sematary, there's allusions to Bigfoot, Wendigo, whatever you want to say. They both deal with grief, but they variate quite a bit after that. It does not feel like a copycat. That was just a little bit of thing I noticed and thought about when I was watching it. And something I do like when you are going into a tale that is based off folklore and, local legends and such is that, when strange things happen, there's a good basis and at least some general rules governing the things that are happening. It allows me to bring my guard down a little bit of trying to think, well, does this make sense? Stuff like that. I would say in this case that applies to Mimic. The structure of this is very well done. It's 2 hours and 20 minutes and it hits beats still at a great pace. It almost feels almost too fast even, just not quite. You see the progression of chaos in this family about an hour into this film really built up well. By that time, it's already built up and believable. Some of that is the writing and the setup. The other part that really goes into play here, though, is the performance of Jung-ah Yum. Uh, she is the wife of the family. The character's name is Hee Yeon, or Yeon Hee, depending, culturally, he is the family name, I believe. A big reason why the actress in that role is so important, whereas in a film like this, a stock generic character may make one, a general decision you would see over and over and over from the stock character, and she will make a different one, and you have to be willing to go along that ride with her, and it has to make sense. And this script seeds it, and she sells it. There's plenty of fine performances, but hers just absolutely pivotal. You have to believe in her experience of losing a child and how that would affect her afterwards into making some different decisions than you'd normally expect. Like she may be placing herself in very explicit danger, very much warned and explicit, this is bad. And you do have to be able to go down that pathway of into danger with her. And while it's a local legend, I almost like to use the word mythos here. And I do like the word mythos here. You could almost say it's Lovecraftian in some ways. Sure, it's a folk tale, but there's always backstory unfolding throughout. And some really nice, weird logic scares. It's probably what made me think Lovecraftian the most. A really fantastic scare is when the daughter of the family comes across something calling her name. I just wouldn't really call this cosmic horror in any way, and I think the emotion actually carries more than a lot of that stuff. The scares and fear in the Mimic landed a lot more than like Japanese movie ghost stories. For the horror nerds, the special effects are nice and gooey. It's very minimal in its CGI. There's only like one part of one shot that I really didn't care for. It's just a small little moment. There's gore in this one, but it's more like what's already part of the scene and not gore in the way of body parts being severed on screen, people being stabbed, thing. It's more like what's already part of the scene, something that's maybe already happened, stuff like that, or maybe something off camera and you see the after effects. The mimic should still work for you if you're fine with the sight of blood, just not into the mayhem and the slashing. The scares were made very effective by a lot of the setup, or in the way that something may be mimicked, or the combination of both. Very effective. Maybe more effective if they gave the movie a different name so you didn't have that idea in your brain already before going in. But something like Mount Jane Tiger isn't going to get somebody to go into the theater, I guess. They also got a lot of mileage out of the interactions between the mother and the main child actor in the film. If that relationship doesn't work, the whole film falls apart. There's a lot of synergy between like the directing, camera placement, and editing that I would say is exceedingly efficient. It rarely gets to be like an action movie. It's more like waves. Everything is brought up, calm, brought up again, calm. And aside from that, I'd like to touch on the score. Looking back, I remember none of it at all. But that's an up for me. That's usually a sign that it enhanced enough of what's on the screen that I didn't notice it. Some scores I notice I love. About a bad soundtrack or score will always get in the way. There's a school of thought that the more you don't pay attention to the score or soundtrack, the better. I think it can go either way. Either you don't notice good, or you notice in a way that pleases you. But bad score, bad soundtrack can ruin some really great moments. So I would like to give The Mimic, that's not from the 90s, a solid 3 out of 4. Effective, creepy moments that do not rely on a jump, but may use a jump to enhance what's there. And this is a real folktale. I do think that that can enhance a story, just knowing enough that it's from actual lore, but still better to go in without knowing details of that lore. Very tight storytelling, having a reason why someone might go headfirst into danger with very explicit warnings. Uh, if there's something bad to say about it, it may be too tight. I sometimes like things to breathe a little more. You're not really getting that here, but it did come in at 2 hours and 20 minutes, so probably best not to extend that. And not sure everyone will like some of the character directions. If you're a person who wants everyone to think of personal safety first at all times or call the cops at every immediate danger, this film might piss you off. Authorities do get involved, though. You might say, oh, hell no, once or twice, for good or bad. And on some personal notes, just getting back into the groove, I had a pretty big family emergency and I have some executive dysfunction already. So getting back on the bike, it takes a little bit, but I should be doing, I think, 3 recordings right now. This will probably be the second one up, but it's the first one I'm recording. And one of those things I'm going to record is an intro, basically, to an old video me and Robert recorded last year, and I just never put it up. I just want to get it up and out as just something to look back on, something personal to see how things have progressed. Feel free to comment or like. I will get back to the comment. It might be a month afterwards, but I'm going to answer every single one. Peace.